All right, we're moving into graphing linear inequalities, and you might want to have some colored pencils or some different colors to work with, and you'll need a ruler or some kind of a straight edge. So if you want to gather your stuff and then write this title in your composition book, Graphing Linear Inequalities, we'll get started. So if you need to pause the video to get your stuff, go for it. First type of question you might see is one like this. Determine whether the ordered pair is a solution of this inequality. Well, we know that when we have an ordered pair, it's always x comma y, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this inequality that we were given, and we're going to remove the x, which is right here, and replace it with a number, 0. Then I'm going to remove the y and replace it with a 0, and then I want to see if it's true. So I get 0 minus 0 is greater than or equal to 3. So, is 0 greater than or equal to 3? No. So this is not a solution. All right, so then I move on to the second one. So it's the same procedure. I have 8x minus 4y is greater than or equal to 3. Same thing. The first term in my ordered pair is my x, and then I have the y. So then I have 8 times 1 minus 4 times negative 1 is greater than or equal to 3. So I get 8, and then a negative times a negative is a positive. So I end up with 12 is greater than or equal to 3. Is that true? Yes. So then yes, this is a solution. So 1, negative 1 would lie on the solution of that inequality. Now, when you're graphing these, how do you know if it's solid line or dashed line? Well, when we graphed inequalities on the number line, if it were less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you knew it had to be a circle that was filled in. If it were just less than or greater than, it was just a circle. Well, it's similar to this. If it's a solid line, then you're going to have the less than or equal to or the greater than or equal to, because a solid line is filled in. The dashed line is if it's just less than or greater than, because it doesn't really include that line, but that's the boundary. And so then where are you going to shade? Well, you just look at where your line crosses the y-axis, and then if it's greater than and equal to or greater than, you're going to shade up. If it's less than or equal to or just less than, you're going to shade down, because it's above the line or below the line, and that's where it crosses the y-axis. All right, so let's take a look at this first inequality. So you'll need your colored pencils or something to shade, and you're going to need some kind of a ruler or a straight edge. So x is greater than or equal to 3. So first I'm going to graph the line x equals 3. So x equals 3 has to cross the x-axis, so here it goes. And then I have to decide if it's a solid or a dotted line. Well, see how that has the line under it? That means it's a solid line. So x equals 3 is this line right here. But it's not just x equals 3, it's x is greater than or equal to 3. So here's x equals 3. Where is the x is larger than that? Well, over here on the right. So I'm going to shade all of this stuff over here on the right, because this represents where x is greater than or equal to 3, and since the line is solid, it could be equal to the 3. So if you need to pause the video to finish that, go ahead and do that, and then start it back up when you're ready. All right, moving on to b. Y is less than or equal to negative 3/4 x plus 2. Now, some of you don't like fractions, but remember, when we have fractions as our slope, it makes our life easier. So my slope is whatever's in front of the x, so it's negative 3/4. My beginning point is 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph that line. So my b is 2, and my slope is negative 3/4. So I'm going to go down 3 and over to the right 4. And there we go. I could keep going if I wanted, down 3 more, to the right 4 more. Then I have to decide if it's solid or dotted. Well, this less than doesn't have a line under it, so it's going to be a dotted line. So I'm just going to start making a dotted line. Okay. So I've got my dotted line. Now I have to decide whether to shade up or down. So I look at my equation and it says y is less than this line. So here's this line, and I'm going to shade down below that because my y values are less than that down here. So I'm shading down here like this. So if you need to pause the video to finish your shading, go ahead, and whenever you're ready, click play and we'll finish up. All right, moving on to C. We have 2y minus 4x is greater than 6. Now, I can't graph this yet because I haven't solved for y. So let's go ahead and solve for y. You guys are super good at this by now. So I'm going to start by adding 4x to both sides. And I get 2y is greater than 4x plus 6. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. I get y is greater than 2x plus 3. Okay, so y is greater than 2x plus 3. So my slope, my m value, is always the coefficient of the x, which is 2. My b is 3. That's the intercept. Now, some people think of that as like the beginning point. So see that b equals 3? I'm going to go up 3 and put a dot. That's where that is. So I'm going to put that point at b, for b equals 3, right up here on the y-axis. Now, my slope is 2. Now, you might have learned when you were younger to make the slope a fraction. So I'm going to make it 2 over 1. So if I go up 2 and to the right 1, here's a dot. I'm going to go up 2 over 1, there's another point. Up 2 over 1, there's another point. Then I have to decide if it's solid or dotted. Well, my inequality symbol doesn't have a line under it, so it's a dotted line. So I'm going to make a dotted line. Okay. Then I have to decide for my shading. Well, my shading, it says y is greater than this line. So here's the line, and here's the y-axis. If the y has to be greater than the line, I've got to shade up here. So I'm going to shade all of this above the line. So that's where I'm shading. So if you need to pause the video to finish up your shading or your graphing, go ahead and do so. All right, moving on to D, graph the inequality. Okay, so I have that same problem as in the last one where I haven't solved for y yet. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Now be careful here. I have negative y is greater than or equal to negative x plus 3. I don't have y by itself, so I have to divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1. And since I divided by a negative, I have to flip my inequality symbol. See that? Be careful that you remember to flip that when you multiply or divide by a negative. And now you get to graph what you came up with. So my slope is whatever is the coefficient of the x. Well, there's nothing there, so that assumes a 1. And if I write it as a fraction, I get 1 over 1. My intercept is this negative 3 because it's y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to graph this. So my beginning point is negative 3, which is down here on the y-axis. And my slope is 1 over 1. So I go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Now I could go down 1, left 1, down 1, left 1 to continue the pattern. Then I have to decide if it's solid or dotted. Well, since this has a line under it, it's a solid line. So I make my solid line this time. Now for the shading, I look at my inequality and I don't go back up to the original problem because remember I had to change it. So I have to start with the one that I changed. That's the one I'm graphing. So I put my pencil where it crosses, so I'm right there where my red dot is. And then it says y is less than this line. So since it's less than that line, I'm going to shade below. Okay, so if you need to pause the video to finish up, go ahead and do so. All right, the next one, it says graph 5x plus 7y is greater than or equal to 10, and then determine which of the ordered pairs are part of the solution set. So basically, I'm going to graph it, and then I'm going to see if these points are where the shading is. Okay, so the tricky part is if you have a dotted line and it asks you if it's on that, it's not going to be on it because it's a dotted line. Because remember, it doesn't include that line. It just is the boundary for it. So they're trying to throw me off here. I got to solve for y first. So let's go ahead and write down our first inequality, and I'm going to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 5x and I get 7y is greater than or equal to negative 5x plus 10. Divide by 7, divide by 7, divide by 7. Now I don't have to flip it because I didn't divide by a negative. So I get negative 5 over 7x plus 10 sevenths. So 10 sevenths is about, well, it is 1 3/7. So that's about almost 1.5, right? So when I graph this, I'm going to go up about 1.5 for my intercept, and then my slope is negative 5 over 7. So I'm going to go down 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to the right 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I have to decide if it's solid or dotted, and it's going to be solid because it has a line under it. So I'm going to connect these two as best I can. Okay. And then for my shading, it says y is greater than this line. So I'm going to shade up here. All right. Now the question is, are these ordered pairs on there? So first I'm going to start with -2, -2. So here's -2, here's -2. Is that in the shaded area? No. So this guy's no. So now I got to do 1, -1. So here's 1, -1. Is that in there? No. Now I got to do 1, 1. Is 1, 1 in there? Yes. And then I have to do 2, 5. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that in the shaded area? Yes. So I have 2 no's, 2 yeses. If you need to pause the video to figure out what happened there, go ahead. Otherwise, let's move on. All right, we've successfully reached checkpoint 1. Go ahead and graph this inequality. Don't forget to solve for y first, and we'll talk about it in class. All right, example 4. Write the linear inequality that's represented in each graph. All right, so I have to, the easiest thing for me to do first is to figure out if my inequality is going to have a line under it or not. So I look at it and it's a dotted line. So it's going to have no line under it. So here's the y. Is the y shaded, is it shaded above or below my line? Well, it's shaded above. So it's going to be y is greater than. Okay. So again, I knew that it had a dotted line, so it's not going to have a line under it. So it's either going to be greater than or less than. So I put my pen right here on the y-axis, and I'm shaded above where the line is. Since it's above, the y that I'm shading is greater than my line. Now, for the equation of the line is y equals mx plus b. My b is the intercept, so it crosses at 4, so I know it's going to be there. And I know I'm going to have an x, I just need the slope. Now, you know a little secret here. Don't you know it's going to be a negative slope? Because look at your line. When you read it like a book from left to right, it's going down. So I know it's going to be negative, and so it's going to be 1, 2 over 1. So my slope is -2 or -2 over 1. So here's my inequality. Y is greater than -2x plus 4. All right, moving on to the next one. I need to write the linear inequality represented by the graph. So I know it's going to have a line under it because look at the line, it's solid. Okay, so I know it's going to have a line under it. So it's going to be y, it's going to have a line under it. It's either going to be greater than or equal to or less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So I put my pencil on the line, so there's my red dot. The shading is down below. That's below the line, that's less than the line. So it's y is less than or equal to, and now I just need my equation. Well, remember the first thing is where does it cross the y-axis? The line crosses at 0, so it's going to be plus 0, or you don't even have to put that. So I can just have nothing there. And then I know I'm going to have my x, and I'm going to have my slope. Now, look right now. Is it positive or negative? You're reading it like a book from left to right, so it's positive, right? And I have to decide what it is. So I just say, well, if I start here, I'm going to go up 1 over 1. So it's just going to be 1x. So I don't even need that 1. I can just say y is less than or equal to x. How about that? Pretty simple. All right, next one. Write the linear inequality that's represented in each graph. That stuff at the top, that's shading. So make sure you understand that that's shading. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need to Figure out the equation of the line. Well, look what I have. I have a horizontal line. The horizontal line crosses the y-axis, so I know it's y equals, well, it's y something. So y equals, it's crossing at what, 5? But now I have to decide, is it a solid or a dotted line? Well, it's a solid line, so it's going to have a line under it. And then it's a shading above or below. Well, it's a shading above, so it's going to be y is greater than or equal to 5. It crosses the y-axis at 5, so it's all those points are y equals 5 points. Okay, there we go. Next, write the linear inequality represented by this graph. All right, we can do this again. So this time I know I'm going to have a dotted line. So I know I'm going to have either less than or greater than. I put my pencil here and the shading is below. So it's going to be y is less than because the shading's below the line. There's no line under my less than because it's a dotted line. Now I have to write the equation. So it crosses at 1, so it's going to end up with a plus 1 because it crosses right here at 1. And then for my slope, I just say, well, I can pick any 2 points I want. So I go down 1 over 1. So it's just negative 1 over 1. So it's just negative x plus 1. Y is less than negative x plus 1. All right, now we've successfully reached checkpoint 2. Go ahead and pause the video and write the linear inequality that represents this graph, and we'll discuss it in class. All right, we made it to the last problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to write an inequality and then we're going to graph it. So Edward writes and edits short articles for a local newspaper. It takes him about an hour to write an article and about a half hour to edit the article. If Edward works up to 4 hours per day, how many articles can he write and edit in a day?